in order to set the scene and so that you understand our formulas and what products to recommend for your client, we do need to cover a bit of basic information first. So we're going to start with a technical review, and we are going to take a look at and make sure that we fully understand the concept of peptides, growth factors, and stem cells. These are all included in our formulas, and they are the key to preventative skincare, but also to corrective skincare that we particularly need when we're talking about people or talking to our customers regarding their skin concerns, particularly as they enter into maturity. So we're going to kind of get right off with the first slide, which is about peptides. Now, peptides have been around for over 100 years. They're not new in the world, but they are newer to skincare. And every day we are seeing more and more peptides coming onto the market, more and more scientific updates regarding these peptides and their availability as we progress with skincare and cosmetic formulations. So what we want to have a look at is that they have been in the medical world for over 100 years, and currently they are actually used to actually help to kill those cancer cells. What we need to understand in skincare is that as we age, all of our messaging systems go haywire. Those of you who have been in my hormone class understand that as our hormones drop, so do many things also drop in their level of activity. And every single thing in your skin does require a messaging system in order to function. It just doesn't function automatically. It feels like it might, but it doesn't. So peptides act as carriers. They actually stimulate and they activate. And using peptide technology, we have been able to recognize or reorganize chemical and neural intercellular messaging systems, which is really exciting. And therefore, we have actually learned how to fully optimize metabolic function with entrance to those cells, and therefore restore balance to the skin. So if we take a look at your skin in general, your skin is your largest organ, right? It is a giant-sized tissue, and it's composed of millions of cells. The cells and the tissues that make up this whole community, because the skin is also an organ, it's not just a tissue, it constantly is communicating. So in your skin, we all know we have skin cells, etc., etc. They are constantly talking to each other. Those messages are frequent, they're happening every second of every day. And if we lose the ability or the ability to communicate slows down, so does the healing and the rejuvenation of our skin. The two go hand in hand. You cannot separate them. And so in order just to maintain homeostasis, a word that I'm sure you all know, right? In other words, to keep balance in the skin, that is a constant ongoing battle of messages, telling the brain, telling the skin what it needs to do to restore itself. So the peptides that we use in skincare are constantly messaging from the dermis to the epidermis. Remember what happens in the dermis, everything is, full of blood vessels. It's the first line of defense, if you like. It's the first line of the messaging systems, sending signals up to the epidermis. But the epidermis is also receiving signals from the environment as well, and it's going back down the other way. So there is a constant messaging service, if you like to call it that, between the epidermis and the dermis, and vice versa. Now, what do peptides actually do? Well, if we take a look at every individual cell in your skin, it is very semi-permeable and very selective as to what it does allow both into the cell and also out of the cell. And so in order to get into the cell, you have to have, I'll call it a key. On the outside of the cell, there are receptors. They're almost like little docking stations. And so if you've got the right key, you can get into the cell to create change. And if you've got the right key and you're on the inside, you can get out of the cell. But if that let's say person trying to log on, that person, listen to me, if that particular, let's say, free radical is trying to get into the cell, it can't because it doesn't have the key to log in and dock and therefore gain access to that cell. So these peptides can unlock, they have the right keys, they can unlock cell surface receptors that allow cellular communication so the skin can actually repair itself. When you think about it, it's really absolutely quite amazing. But we also have to remember that in every cell is the cell nucleus, which is where our DNA is kept. And we can't have all kinds of unwanted things getting into that cell that can disrupt our DNA. That would not be appropriate. Okay, so if we look at different peptides, there are quite a few different groups and styles of peptides. But what I want you to remember is that every peptide that is in your formulas only does one specific job. Each peptide, each messaging system is very specific, and they all have their own role to play in the skin. So the first group of peptide in the peptide family is what we call a structural peptide. And structural peptides are very common because it resolves the thing that we're always chasing, and that is collagen production and keeping the skin firm. So structural peptides actually are structured or designed to stimulate type 4 and type 7 collagen, along with the associated fibers that we need to create that full cellular matrix. And so these things, fibronectin, the laminins, etc., and the collagens, all have a very complex binding system that is between the epidermis and the dermis. Peptides assist these fibers and chains to pull closer together, reflecting in the increased tension at the junction that helps us create a firmer skin. Now, what does that mean? It means that these structural peptides get to what we call the dermal epidermal junction, which, if you remember from school, it looks like this, where the two sections of your skin meet, and we call those the Reet ridges. And that is where we actually firm the skin. Firming the skin is not in the surface, it's not below, it's that junction that joins the two pieces of your skin together. So these structural peptides that we use when we say they are for firming, that's where their target goal is in those Reet ridges, to keep the tension between the two layers of your skin very tight and joined and together. What happens is, if that doesn't get the message to stay right, tight and rigid, is we get this very, very square jaw right here. And we're all concerned about that as we age. We have a second set of peptide families that are not structural, but they're to do with your actual neural messaging within the skin. So our neuropeptide skincare, so let's call them Botox-like skincare things, or things that slow down the aging process. These particular neurotransmitters focus on how wrinkles are formed, and we use neuropeptide technology to prevent and smooth wrinkles through blocking, here we go, through blocking cell communication instead of encouraging it. So this is a reverse model. So you all know that when you use Botox, nothing happens. You are actually blocking the ability to frown. We stop the neurotransmission completely. In skincare, we don't do that. What we do is we slow that message down, which is really important. And that allows mom, if she's got little ones, to actually have some form of facial expressions versus no facial expressions if they are using injectable Botox. And that is actually a thing right now. So what they do is they inhibit what we call acetylcholine interactions, and we'll explain that a little bit further in the PowerPoint as we go along. All right, we have two more groups here. The third group of peptides are what we call signal peptides, and these are the most common peptide and the largest family of peptides. And so what they actually do is actually send a signal to stimulate collagen when we need it. So it's not architectural, it's not building, it's telling the body that we need more, and then we start to build. Two different types of things. So signal peptides stimulate collagen and elastin and something called fibronectin and glycosaminoglycans. Now, fibronectin is part of that complex, dense set of fibers that hold your skin together. But glycosaminoglycans are what we call your extracellular matrix. And it's that base, or that liquid base, that bathes all the cells all over the body. And believe it or not, those glycosaminoglycans, or that sugary liquid base, is a very, very important part of ensuring that messages get from one cell to another. If your glycosaminoglycans are present or they're insufficient, that can slow down the messaging systems. And of course, as we age, that's another thing that declines and therefore adds to the whole slowdown in our signaling system in our skin. So the most common individual signal peptide is palmitoyl pentapeptide, and it's commonly known as matrixyl. Matrixyl has been around for many years, but it keeps getting better. It keeps coming out in different forms. And what you're going to see in our formulations in a little while is something called matrixyl synth 6, which is the latest development in matrixyl. And boy, does it do some really exciting things. It's absolutely great. It is used in tiny amounts in formulations, and therefore, theoretically, it's acting as a signal to produce collagen. And then that is that cascading effect that I talked to you a few minutes ago about. This in turn has a down-regulating effect on the production of collagenase. Now, what is collagenase? Well, collagenase, by its ending ASE, signals it's an enzyme. So obviously, as we age, I mean, from the day we're born, actually, as we age and get older, collagen does get old. It has to be broken down, disintegrated, and taken away, creating a negative impact in the skin. That negative void, if you want, then creates a signal to create new collagen. Again, that whole cascading effect seems to disappear or definitely slow down as we actually get older. But what we do know from science is that as we age, we have way more collagenase than we should in our skin. So what we want to do is inhibit it. What that does is it stops the breakdown of collagen, but in a good cosmetic formulation. And when we talk about pro-aging, what we're looking to do now with technology is to keep the collagen that we have and renew it and look after it and take care of its health and keep it functioning metabolically, therefore reducing the signal to the body that we don't need to break it down. So inhibiting the production of collagenase is very important. Not in your younger days, but as you age, it's a very important part of what we need to do and change in the day-to-day function of the skin. Our signal peptides can come in two forms. We have enzyme modulators that can act as a signal. That is very common in the skin in more ways than one. Collagen, the breakdown of collagen is the one that I just mentioned. But we also have what we call carrier peptides, and carrier peptides deliver trace elements that help with wound repair. Now, a trace element would be calcium and magnesium, and B vitamins, and so on and so forth. Iron, zinc, these are all trace elements essential to good skin health. And when we have a wound in the skin or something is broken, if it's broken down by a free radical or a treatment, let's say, then we need those carrier peptides to help heal the skin. And in order to heal the skin, we have to have certain things available to us required for cell repair. So sometimes these particular carrier peptides are known as penetrating peptides, and they carry a particular element like a micro vitamin or something to the area of concern. So everything when your skin is wounded or whether it needs repairing, there are all kinds of peptides required in order to heal it, to send a message, to build collagen, an architectural peptide to actually build that collagen, a peptide to take care of the aminoglycans, and of course now a peptide to signal that we need those actual trace elements in our system to be able to fully repair the area of concern. Now, with that, when we talk about wound healing and repair and keeping the skin healthy, we have something called growth factors. They are exactly as they sound. They promote growth. So first of all, peptides click in. Yes, we've got signals, we've got it all going on, but we cannot repair that skin without the growth factors being present in order to stimulate mitosis and get the whole system going. So we need growth factors to accelerate that skin renewal that we were just talking about, building collagen. They're naturally found in the skin and they're responsible for your overall cell health and the signaling cells to produce that collagen. Healthy cells, while they're still going strong, do secrete growth factors to stimulate mitosis. I'm sure you remember what mitosis is, right? Right down in the bottom, where the mother cells stay where they are in the basement membrane, and they split and divide, and the daughter cell makes its way up to the surface to become a keratinocyte. So when skin is wounded, cells produce growth factors that communicate to their surrounding cells that repair is needed. So they're an essential signaling system. And growth factors not only play a role in that cell division or mitosis that we just talked about, but also in the new cell and blood vessel growth called angiogenesis, and also in the collagen elastin production and distribution, which is, again, I hate to say it, but we're constantly chasing that in mature skincare. The problem again is not only do our messaging systems decline, our production of growth factors also declines. So in a pro-aging situation, in the skin, growth factors have to be also stimulated by some means. And experts agree that any stage of collagen replacement, we all hear this, or repair, which is what I'm talking about, requires some form of stimulation or a wound healing response. Now that stimulation can be, let's say you just did microneedling, or it could simply be that some tissue has been invaded by free radicals, it's created damage, therefore creates a wound, and that those free radicals also then in turn create this wound healing response. Growth factors, therefore, are responsible for orchestrating and regulating cellular function and repair pre, during, and post-injury. So on your side of the fence, wound healing, current wound healing treatments include chemical peels, very extensive or aggressive exfoliation of other kinds, radio frequencing, and of course, microneedling and laser. So any formulation with peptides and growth factors in it are post-treatment are excellent. So when you see the ingredient decks to follow, I'm sure you'll be able to pick up on that. Now, I do want you to realize too, in talking about mature skin, as you can see from the screen, One of the things that slows all these powerful messaging systems are your hormones. And if you've not taken one of my hormone classes yet, please do sign up for the next one. It's something that you need to know about in detail to be able to fully function with your clients. And as you can see from my note, the estrogen does help with the production of growth factors, and therefore as estrogen drops, so does the supply of growth factors and the supply of peptides as well. So as you can see also, estrogen is literally involved in every single part of your skin. Just to point out to you the word angiogenesis again, that is your blood vessels that need to heal. I think you know what your fibroblasts are. We need to have those fibroblasts in full working action if we're going to produce the collagen that we absolutely need. That is critical. Yes, it's important for sebaceous gland health that can get broken as well. And of course, for pigmentation. If you are low in estrogen, you're going to get more pigmentation. We don't want that. And as many of you know, I do use bioidentical topically applied hormones in order not to keep just my brain health and my heart health and everything else healthy, but also contribute towards my skin health, which, you know, every day, every month, every year becomes an ongoing battle. So those things are important. The growth factor benefits when we apply them topically to the stratum corneum on the outside, and we use them in our serums, is really quite profound. And we do know they do actually stimulate a repair message that creates a signal to the dermis, stimulating fibroblasts to produce collagen and to revitalize the skin. So yeah, we can put them in a formula. They do actually work. We have a single formula and we have a cream, various creams actually with those 5 important growth factors that we need for good skin health. So these are a must for anybody over the age of 35 that's experiencing skin aging and environmental change. There's a simple preventative action that we can use, but we do need to pair them with peptides to complete the signal. A little hyaluronic acid wouldn't go amiss, along with antioxidants and stem cells. So the last part of this technical side is, what is a stem cell? Well, we do know that, you know, there's a lot of information out there. A stem cell is an undifferentiated cell that can go where it's required, when it's required, and become not just a skin cell, but a liver cell, a kidney cell, whatever it's required to do, it can actually convert to that type of cell to help in the healing processes. Quite wonderful when you think about it. Now, in our skin, they are actually found in our epidermis. A little pocket is there, and they're actually found in the ridges that we talked about earlier. And so our stem cells are very easily subject to UV damage. And when you'll see when we start to talk about stem cells in our formulas, our stem cells are plant cells. You can't replace human stem cells. And so in a formula, they do actually act, I'll call them giant antioxidants. They are a backup and a support and a protection for your own stem cells. But of course, the biggest protection that you can have for your own stem cells is to wear a sunscreen. And in this day and age, with summers that we have, an SPF 50 is a minimum, particularly if you are on the mature side, very important. So plant stem cells come from the meristem of a plant. The meristem of a plant is where the action is. There, every time you see a new stem or a new leaf or a new flower, something new happening on a plant, that's where the meristems are, and that is called the meristem, and that's where the plant's growth factors and stem cells are actually located. And that's what creates the new growth. And we know that because we can actually produce from those stem cells in the meristem, we can actually produce homeopathic and naturopathic medicines that we do know from science works. We know from science that when we actually take the stem cells from those meristems for cosmetic chemistry, they do actually work. They do contribute to your repair system. So in our inside skin, if you want, in our internal repair system, stem cells help to protect our own stem cells. They accelerate collagen production. They're great. Keratinite stem cells divide slowly. One remains true to the stem cell, while the other one is programmed to differentiate. So it can switch. You get topical right on the surface of your skin where your keratinites are. Then the keratinite stays put, but then the stem cell comes in, replicates that, and it's what goes into action to repair the surface of your skin or anywhere else. So that is literally how it works. No different than the mother cell that's in the laminate base and does mitosis to create those new cells originally, right? So these stem cells are, as I said, subject to ultraviolet light, and loss of stem cells can cause a look of aging skin. They all work together. So the last part of this is in review. So growth factors signal, they're there to repair, signal stem cells to migrate to that particular area that has been wounded. And they actually then start with other things that are there to promote the renewal of collagen, elastin, and, you know, the actual epithelial itself. In the skin, your growth factors work with your natural epidermal stem cells to stimulate wrinkle repair, improve elasticity, and to protect you, as I said earlier, against environmental damage, particularly UV damage. Stem cells, therefore, support your cellular growth and division, leading to the synthesis of collagen and elastin. And that, therefore, helps in turn to reduce and restore the amount of wrinkles that are apparent on your skin. So that is an all-important part. Now, we are going to move on now to take a look at our Luminate collection. But as we go through today's PowerPoint, I want you to remember that you are going to see the growth factors, the stem cells, and more than ever, you are going to see the original signaling peptides that start the whole process going.